We're those guys. We hope to be your guys. Hey, you see these guys? Why not those guys? I'm Alex Hardy. He's Nick Ferguson. We are back bringing you the NFC North, previewing every single division before the games kick off September 5th. I should probably look this up before we continue saying it. I'm just going to keep saying it. Hey, Nick, what do you have to say? What's going on, my man?
Hey man, it's football time, so let's get into it and break down this North Division.
One of the tightest divisions last year. I mean, even the Chicago Bears in fourth place, you had a lot of promise. Of course, the number one overall pick in the 2024 draft. And we'll get to Caleb Williams and kind of how the expectations shift with the number one head coach in last year's cycle. But let's start with the team that won the division back-to-back years and where, well, Ben Johnson is coming from. The Detroit Lions. A lot of questions, right? They were the number one seed in the NFC. Yes, they were. We're just going to go for it. Why would I look up whether or not I'm right? Again, like, subscribe, write in the comments how wrong you are, Alex. Lions, they were pretty good last year. They do this despite leading the league with injuries on the defensive side of the ball. So let's look back to last year before we move into this year. Last season, this team won 14 games and nobody had more injuries on both sides of the ball. On the defensive side, it started with Aiden Hutchinson. It started with key critical players, and yet this team kept chugging along. Is this an identity thing? Is this are we crediting Dan Campbell? Is this depth? Are we crediting the front office, led by Brad Holmes as the general manager? Or is this just sort of next man up? Like the players understood the assignment. So look, they can't lead the league in injuries 2 years in a row. So are the Lions better simply because they'll be healthier coming into this year?
Well, the one thing, Alex, that you can prepare for as a coach is the health of your players. You just cross your fingers, put a four-leaf clover in your pocket, and pray to the football gods. And I mean, when you talk about a team that was snake bitten, the Lions definitely were. But here's where I see that con can turn into a pro. With this team having so many injuries they had last year, there are a lot of young players and veteran players who didn't really get a lot of playing time, typically leading up to this point. Those individuals played a lot. They contributed a lot. They were part of that 14-3 run by Dan Campbell and these same Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
But the idea is applying that for Detroit muscle type of attitude, that blue collar type of attitude, because sometimes you just got to go in a game and beat someone's ass, right? And that's kind of what the Lions were last year. And they were kind of the belle of the ball. And I understand why. When you think about Jared Goff, when you think about Jeff Fisher, you think about Sean McVay, those two coaches kind of kicked him off and said, well, you know what? He's a has-been. You go ahead and take him, Detroit Lions. And Ben Johnson said, you know what?
Yep.
Let me polish you up. Let me shine you and take the rust off. And also let me show you a creative offense and allow you to throw to different guys. And by the way, you have Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery as your running back. Not too bad of a running back tandem to have. But I have my questions about the Detroit Lions this year because as creative as Jared Goff was, it was Ben Johnson calling those plays. He's no longer there. So I feel the Lions are going to take somewhat of a slight step back this season.
We mentioned Ben Johnson. We'll get to your guy, Aaron Glenn, as well. I see all the changes at the coaching staff. And if you haven't, go back to our NFC East preview, the first one we did for the 2025 season. You didn't see much of an issue with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, because the Lions are replacing two coordinators and some of their assistants underneath, there's a lot of turnover and a lot of next man up, right? They experienced it on the defensive side of the football last year. Now they're
Mhm.
doing it on the coaching staff coming into this year. They also have to do it on the offensive line, right? We talk about how important the um, the healthy, consistent offensive line gets you in the National Football League. They are turning over their entire interior. Center Frank Ragnow, who's playing at an all-pro level, retires. Jonah Jackson leaves in free agency. So they're replacing guys that we knew as household names with rookies, with free agent signings, with next man up type of guys. Uh, and so that's sort of the core of it for me, right? As maybe I'm overthinking this. as granular and as simple. Like, how important, Nick, is a change from a center who was snapping the ball from the day Jared Goff got there to now him working with somebody completely different? Can we zoom into that point? Like, how important is it with a center and a changing of the guard? Not literally a guard, Nick. I mean, come on now. But changing the center who's snapping the ball to Jared Goff. They had so much success with Ragnow. I'm not, going to talk down on anybody replacing him, but those are some shoes to fill.
Well, they are, but I mean, listen. I mean, you change your underwear every day. You don't wear the same pair of underwear. So the idea is that this was a situation that was happening in the game, and it would just it happened right away. You lose your starting center, and the backup center comes in. The center quarterback exchange is going to be a problem. But when you lose your center, then you have opportunity to work in the offseason with a new center. To me, you're able to work out some of those kinks. You have joint practices, you have preseason, and you have the regular practices to go through the routines and learn. Okay, as a quarterback, okay, when I lift my foot and show my hands, this is where I want
Where
you
the
to
underwear
place the
goes.
ball. Well, yeah, exactly. Then when you are playing from under center, once again, it's either it's one touch or two touches, and what I'm doing is almost like Pac-Man. The quarterback does this with his hands, and he's telling the center, "This is when I want you to deliver the ball." But once again, when you have that time to work with that new center in the offseason, it shouldn't be a problem. But now, if we go into week one and we're seeing quarterback center exchange, to me, it makes me wonder what the hell did the Lions do this entire offseason? But like I said, we both change our underwear every day. At least I hope we do, right? So this whole thing about center, missing Ragnow, that shouldn't be a problem for the
Okay.
Detroit Lions and Jared Goff.
And zooming out just a little bit, the entire interior, they had the time, they had this offseason, but a huge adjustment, going from one year to the next. We love the weapons. You mentioned the running game. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams. They add the third round rookie Isaac Tisla. Just a big dude, who I'm kind of excited to see as well, but he's going to get a little buried on the depth chart. Look, this team is full of weapons on both sides of the football. They add a bunch of pass rushers in the draft and in free agency to sort of help Aiden Hutchinson, who's getting double teamed more than anybody other than Max Crosby in the National Football League. So I'm encouraged. And if they were to rattle off their third straight NFC North division championship, it would be the first time that they three-peated as division champs going back to 1954, Nick Ferguson. What were you doing back then?
Wasn't in existence at that time.
You and me both. So standing in their way last year, week 18, the most meaningful game when none of the fantasy games count, those Minnesota Vikings. They went 14-3, couldn't get the job done, couldn't win the division.
Yeah, yeah.
And look, we will get to the change at quarterback because that's obviously the biggest thing. JJ McCarthy getting hurt, tearing his ACL in the preseason last year, hasn't taken a snap. Was named the starter. They moved Sam Darnold to Seattle, but the team, listen, whether it's your guy Nick Mullins or they even had some, they had the Pastronaut playing games for them. They had Kirk Cousins. They move over to Sam Darnold. The identity of that offense is carried through their head coach, Kevin
Yeah.
O'Connell. So, as important as Ben Johnson was to Detroit, Kevin O'Connell, more important for the Minnesota Vikings. And we can even talk about Brian Flores too, but let's start with the offense. Look, the ceiling of this team, is it all on JJ McCarthy and thereby all on Kevin O'Connell?
Yeah, it is. And the reason I say that because at some point, JJ McCarthy actually has to earn that draft status. I'll say he's a former first round pick,
He is.
even though he hasn't really played. And when you think about all the other picks drafted in the first round in that same year, all those guys have played, right? All those guys have played and played well. And you can say whatever you want to say about Caleb Williams. I still think that his touchdown to interception ratio was still great in
Yeah, we'll get to
Chicago,
that. Yeah, absolutely.
despite
I
what
agree.
what the offensive line was like. But what they did in Minnesota, I like it. I mean, you made a trade. You got the veteran Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is a proven quarterback. I mean, he helped, the Philadelphia Eagles until he got injured. Nick Foles came in and won a Super Bowl. But once again, Carson Wentz is a great veteran backup. He's mobile. If
Mhm.
there were any hiccups with JJ McCarthy, now you can plug and play him and things will go well. You have Jordan Mason, Georgia Tech guy coming over
There you
from
go.
San
Yeah, that
Francisco.
bruiser to help kinda shoulder the load from, Aaron Jones.
That's right.
It's a
So
balanced running game.
it's a balanced running game, but the only question mark was at the quarterback position. It makes you wonder to go and trade for Carson Wentz. Is there something that we're not being told about JJ McCarthy that they needed a break in case of emergency type of quarterback in Carson Wentz?
Yeah, Carson Wentz, comes over as a free agent. They got some draft capital trading Sam Howell to Philly. You wonder what Howie Roseman is up to, knowing that, look, they get up draft capital. Um, After Tanner McKee played really well, he had a bit of an injury too, so it's kind of look they need quarterback depth, but
Yeah.
they get some draft capital and sign Carson Wentz. So at this point, we know who Carson Wentz is. He's not what he was, so I'm not really thinking he's going to compete or provide anything other than veteran depth and have some familiarity with Kevin O'Connell's offense. So I'm curious to see how things kind of get going with JJ McCarthy, kind of caretaking that offense, but we need him to it. Just don't turn the football over because that's what the defense is going to do with Brian Flores. I mean, nobody more aggressive, nobody that blitzes more in the league by a large margin too. If they can be comfortable on offense like they were with Kirk Cousins 2 years ago and Sam Darnold
Danny.
last year, uh, look, they can continue to be aggressive on defense. Their identity on defense, I think, is even more instinctual to who they are in terms of their success.
Well, Alex, to that point, the one reason that Brian Flores has been as successful, obviously he has a couple of guys, a couple of pieces, but Van Ginkel, like that guy
Oh my God,
last
yes.
season, man, he was always in the right place. When you talk about Johnny on the spot, Van Ginkel was definitely that guy. If they can get that same level of production from Van Ginkel, Flores is going to blitz a lot. And I think if you were to look at the numbers and say, well, Flores probably leads the league last season and blitzes and man coverage, then you have to go no further than looking at Vance Joseph and the Denver Broncos and look at what they were able to do defensively. So if their defense, their run game sounds cliche, but it is valuable and it's important, and Justin Jefferson and Addison have a great year, once again, now you're talking about maybe Minnesota taking that next step and possibly overtaking Detroit. It's a strong possibility.
Well, I want to shout out Blake Cashman, the green dot for that defense, who, to his credit, missed 2 games last year. They lost both of them, including that 30-20 loss to the Rams. Like there are a couple of essential pieces to that Brian Flores defense. And like you said, bring the 4-leaf clover with you. You can never account for injuries, but they just have certain guys, Van Ginkel, Cashman, uh, escaping me now, not Daniil Hunter because he's in Houston. And who came over
Yeah,
from Houston?
yeah.
Jonathan Grenard. Those guys are irreplaceable, right? So for as high octane and as successful as that defense is, you just don't want things to be a house of cards. So hopefully they're able to address it and sustain any kind of setbacks that they could possibly have. So right, last year was between the Lions and the Vikings. It came down to Week 18. But meanwhile, Nick, the Green Bay Packers won 11 games last year, and here's the issue: 11-1 against the rest of the league, 0-6 against Minnesota, Detroit, and the Eagles, including their playoff loss to Philly.
Well, you know what? Everything's going to rest on, Jordan Love. And I know this was a guy who took a lot of criticism and everyone was wondering what he was going to be. He really showcased what he was in 2024. And when you look at the Packers, they were beat up. Christian Watson, you look at some of those other wide receivers, it's
No.
hard to really show what you can do as a quarterback if some of your receivers are banged up. But if the Packers can stay healthy, their defense is coming back. A guy who I work with, Coach Halfley in San Francisco, he's their defensive coordinator. He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
He's going to have that defense ready to go. But once again, it's that offense. Can you stay healthy? Can you continue to lean on, Josh Jacobs, which I encourage? I might have to pick him up
Sure.
on my fantasy team, but
Attaboy.
once again, to keep your offense in rhythm, you got to have some balance, and they have weapons. It's just a matter of health with those with that particular team. If they can do that, Alex, now they put themselves in the competition. Now you're asking yourself, are you looking at the Packers as an actual contender, or are you looking at them as a team that can compete? There's a difference between the two.
They could check both boxes, and they did last year. Not necessarily contend because of how they performed against those better teams, but listen, you mentioned Halfley and shout out his stop at Boston College. It was sort of one of those referendums where you're going, is college football broken? You got the head coach of an ACC program leaving to be an assistant, a DC in the NFL, but it all worked out. And that's the problem. The Packers had a top 8 offense last year, a top 6 defense, but so did Minnesota and Detroit, right? They didn't separate themselves against those teams that were better than them. And it really starts to beg the question, you know, they're a good team, but we're kind of coming up on rent being due if Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love is the combo that you want for this team long term. That's kind of what's at stake if they continue to fall against these teams, especially within their own division.
Yeah, that is definitely true. I mean, rent's coming due, and after a couple of years, there's a lot of anticipation, and fans get restless, and
Yep.
I get it, especially the Packers fan. I mean, you could talk about having so much promise, but for Jordan Love, he would always be measured by the quarterbacks that came before him,
Yeah,
and
he's got to play 20 years and win one Super Bowl. That's the minimum.
Yeah, and listen, it's tough. It's tough when you're following a Brett Favre or you following, a different quarterback and you're
You can
stepping
say
in.
his name. If we say Aaron Rodgers twice, it's the third time he'll pop out of a mirror.
No, you know what? But yes, Aaron Rodgers,
That's 2.
when you follow a quarterback like that, a lot of pressure is going to be on you to be able to duplicate the MVPs and the Super Bowl appearances. But I still think Jordan Love is a top flight quarterback in this league. But a quarterback isn't anything without his protection,
Mhm.
the scheme, and the running game. So once again, it comes down to, do you look at the Packers as being a contender or a competitive team? I look at them as being a competitive team. Aaron
Look,
Rodgers.
they
Three
surrounded
and
Jordan
that's 3
Love,
times.
Zach Tom
That
well, here, uh, they they have foundational pieces, and you agree Jordan Love is one of them. Zach
Yes,
Tom, a right tackle they pick in the 5th round, they just gave a huge extension to, and they're gonna take a swing Matthew Golden out of Texas in the 1st round. They're continuing to add pieces and, more importantly, keep the good pieces around him that
right.
now's the time for him, and hopefully he's healthy this year because I know that he was dealing with, injuries as well, throughout the better part of last year. Things hopefully get right on track. And look, that's kind of what we're asking the Chicago Bears. We let off with Ben Johnson, and we'll get to what his addition and what his game plan is for 2025. And a really kind of spicy quote from Roma Dunze I'll get to. But just looking back at 2024, something we try to do with each of the teams before moving forward, just flat out keeping Matt Eberflus, retaining him coming into last year. He ended up with 3 offensive coordinators, 3 play callers, I should say. Was 2024 was Caleb Williams' rookie season a complete waste?
No, I don't think so. Because just look at his touchdown to interception ratio. The only problem for Caleb was, you're making that adjustment and that jump to the league. And I don't think that the Chicago Bears did a great job of really setting him up. When DJ Moore was like your top wide receiver, Roma Dunze was just a rookie last season. And even though those two were talented wide receivers, Caleb Williams was running for his life a lot.
Mm,
And the Bears did a great job. Well, I'm not gonna say a great job, I just have to see. They did a decent job of adding to their offensive line room to try to
sure.
supply some protection for Caleb Williams. Because if you really want to evaluate a guy that you took in the 1st round, you got to give him opportunity to throw the ball down the field, first and foremost. And adding Ben Johnson and the creativity of Ben Johnson, I mean, it bodes well for Caleb Williams and his maturity as a quarterback, but it doesn't help out the Detroit Lions, the team where Ben Johnson came from. So the creativity, I'm looking to see that more. And then when you look at the fact that, I mean, the Bears have two good tight ends, right? They got two good tight ends, so they can spread the field out. And then you got DeAndre Swift as your running back. Life looks good for Caleb Williams. We just have to see if the Chicago Bears can actually put it together. But this is a team I think is going to surprise so many people because this isn't your father Chicago Bears.
Mhm. I hope you're right. You know, we had high expectations, calling it, quote, the best situation for a number one pick because, look, it was the Panthers' pick. It was not their own. They acquired it in the trade a couple of years ago, and it just like look, it netted them a top flight receiver in DJ Moore, the weapons like you said. But look, shout out Patriots great, Chiefs great, Joe Tooney, aka the human teach tape at that interior offensive line position. Buying time is great. Caleb has to be confident in his reads, his progressions, and he's got happy feet to the extent that he's got to be able to accept taking the easies, the gimmies, the singles, the doubles, and hitting home runs every time you're at the plate isn't always a sustainable formula, right? Ben Johnson's going to be able to drill that into him, and having multiple weapons at different levels of the field with the tight end position, with the receiver position. Look, 10th overall pick on the tight end. There are going to be some high expectations. Sam Laporte, look, we're just going to transport what Ben Johnson did in Detroit and
Yep.
Chicago. That's how it works. Sam Laporta, 10 touchdowns his rookie season. Obviously, that's exactly what Colson Loveland is going to do. No, what it means is you have a larger target that plays in line, that plays in the slot, can line up outside, just give the offense multiple looks.
But don't
And
wait, don't forget my guy Cole Kmet. Don't forget
we
Cole
look,
Kmet. Now,
look, we love Cole Kmet. I have no problem with Cole Kmet. I'm just like he can be in line. He can do some of the dirty work as well. I'm just saying the dude out of Michigan who was catching passes from JJ McCarthy to win a national championship, like we just talked about, can line up all over the field. That's what they're going to ask out of him. DJ Moore is taking reps at running back during training camp. Like Roma Dunze is lining up on the in the slot and on the outside. Luther Burden, the second round pick. Again, like this is a team that we said had weapons last year. He was the number 10 overall pick and their second round pick on pass catchers. So this situation and look, trading for offensive linemen as well. Like there's just more on Caleb's plate. He's got to be able to eat. It's just that simple. And Ben Johnson hopefully can do that for them. But here was the quote from Omadunze ITs. He said, sometimes it takes 2 years for an offense to fully plant in, right? For things to fully get underway. And he had three different offenses last year, right? I mentioned after firing Eberflus and the play caller, Shane Waldron, and the interim. And so I'm just sort of wondering, like, Ben Johnson has an incredible offense that turned one of the hapless franchises in Detroit into a contender, right? We said going for three straight
uh-huh.
division titles. Maybe it's not all put together right away. Maybe this is the year before the year. The 5-year contract. Caleb Williams doesn't need an extension for 2 more years. Maybe look, we can be excited for the Bears again, but maybe they overtake Detroit and Minnesota next year. And maybe they're just, as you said with Green Bay, competitive, not contenders.
But see, that's not why Ben Johnson took the job. Ben Johnson looked at his situation in the setup with the Detroit Lions, and he looked at the offensive side of the ball, the quarterback, the wide receiver, the two running backs, and like you talked about Sam Laporta, the tight end, and said, well, what team gives me that same personnel where I can go in and put my stamp of approval and my fingerprint on an organization and say that I was able to be, to take that team to a whole different level and do the same thing that they were able to do with the Dan Campbell in Detroit, but do it as a head coach. And he looked no further than Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. And it just seemed as though, well, why would you go there and take your talent and creativity? He said, well, look at the talent, right? All they are in lack of is direction, right? And he is there to supply the direction for the team. So Ben Johnson is not taking that idea that, you know what? Next year will be our year. He's like, no, I'm willing to do it this year because he has faith in the players, the way that they coach, and the scheme. So once again, I'm a huge fan of what Ben Johnson was able to do with the Detroit Lions, and I'm eager to see how that translates with Caleb Williams and this Bears offense this season.
Going through the NFC North, I've got the Lions three-peating. I go Packers, Vikings, Bears. How do you see the division?
Ooh, I got it. Lions, Bears, Packers, Vikings.
All right. He's Nick Ferguson. You can follow him at Nick Ferguson underscore 25. I'm Alex Hardy. We are those guys. Hey, you see those guys, these guys doing well? Why not those guys? How about the guy who can actually get the slogan right? You can continue to follow us through our division previews. We're going to get these all out before the season starts. If you missed the NFC East earlier, you can catch that on the podcast YouTube feed. And again, you can find us wherever you download your podcast. You can see us on YouTube through Ride the Wave Media. So shout out to the NFL on its way back, and shout out to you, Nick Ferguson. What do you have to say to the people?
Hey, don't eat those peeps, even though it's Easter is gone. Those things are terrible.
It, if you got peeps lying around from April for Thanksgiving, like hit hit me up. Let me know. Those will
No,
end world
man,
hunger.
you don't want to eat those things. Those things are, I mean, they're walking diabetes, man.
You ever put them in the microwave and they expand?
Oh, see, first of all, see, now you're talking about two things that don't even go together: peeps and a microwave.
I'm
Come on,
just
man.
saying they're this big. They're this big. You put them in the microwave and they get bigger. That's how you end world hunger.
Well, if that's the case, well, I'll starve. I'm good.